Welcome to our second session of Aspire 2020. We're so glad that you are joining us again today. If you haven't had a chance to watch the session from Monday with Fatty and Heidi about what is resiliency, we definitely encourage you to watch that, but it's not necessary before joining us today. And today we're going to talk about the importance of our thinking and what role that plays in resiliency. So Zelalem, known as Ziggy by his friends, is going to talk to us about growth versus fixed mindset, what it is, how to develop it, how to practice it, and why it's important for resiliency. But in terms of thinking, it's just so important for us when we are in a situation where we need resilience to believe that we are capable of change, to be able to reframe, to see the situation for what it is, and how we can move through it. So really excited for you to join us today, and with that, we're going to pass it over to Ziggy, who joined us in Rwanda earlier this year. So thank you, Ziggy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today to talk about growth mindsets. My name is Zelalem Asmamaw, and it's a real privilege for me to talk to you today on this topic. I would also like to thank the folks at Venture to Impact for organizing what I'm sure will be very informative series of talks on resilience as part of the Aspire 2020, which I'm looking forward to myself. So for today, the agenda will be as follows. I'd like to start off with a brief personal introduction, and then I would like to get into a little bit more into what exactly we mean by growth versus fixed mindsets and what are some of the common attributes associated with these two different mindsets. And then I would like to give you some more examples of growth mindsets. And then fourth, I wanted to give some specific tool sets on how we can go about achieving a growth mindset. And more specifically, I wanted to adopt design thinking tools as a way to achieve this. And then fifth, I wanted to just add a few cautionary notes about growth mindset in general. That's what I'm referring to as beyond growth. And I would like to end by outlining 5 steps that I hope we can all take today as part of our journey towards a growth mindset. So that's the agenda for today. And just as a brief disclaimer, of course, opinions expressed here are mine and not behalf of any company. These are just based on some of my experiences and some research that I've done on this particular topic. So just as a personal introduction of myself, I am part of the iPhone engineering team at Apple for the past 6 years. I have both an engineering and a liberal arts background, so I try to be at the intersection of sort of technology and the liberal arts myself. I would describe myself to be a lifelong learner, and I hope to talk a little bit more today on why I think that's such a valuable thing. And just on a personal note, for me personally, my father is really my role model when it comes to resilience and growth mindset. He was a very active person, but at a later stage in his life, he lost his eyesight. And at first, initially, this was hard for myself and for our family in general, but he not only was able to adapt to his new circumstances, but he was also able to really be successful. And whether that meant the simple things like just learning how to navigate from the living room to the bedroom, or learning how to incorporate physical exercises as part of his lifestyle. And also he learned how to pivot in his career to try to take on more consulting or advisory roles, so and also he used to be a big fan of audiobooks. I'm sorry, big fan of reading, but now that his vision has been lost, he adopted to listening to audiobooks in order to still get the reading that he enjoyed so much. So on several facets of his life, he was able to able to grow and to adapt to his new circumstances. So witnessing that on a daily basis, to me, was inspiring, and is inspiring. So that's just one example of a role model for growth mindset in my life. And that's why I'm a big believer in adopting growth mindset to be able to adjust to the various challenges that life can throw at us. So on this note, I would like to talk more about in terms of what we mean by growth versus fixed mindsets, and what are some of the most common attributes associated with each of these mindsets. So I try to divide this into 5 different categories here. In terms of skill, when somebody has a fixed mindset, the tendency there is to think that skills are something that you are just born with, and sometimes that will lead you to feel that you're stuck without any options. Versus if you have a growth mindset, then the tendency there is to view skills as something that comes from practice, and that it is something that can be improved over time and through practice. When it comes to challenges, the tendency for someone with a fixed mindset is to just try to avoid them in general. And challenges can also be seen as threatening because they could reveal a lack of skills. On the other side, for someone with a growth mindset, challenges are actually something to be embraced. And often they will find creative ways to find a solution. Similarly, when it comes to effort, effort is perceived by someone with a fixed mindset as something that is too hard, and that you cannot find a solution. And also, and this is key, there's a tendency to focus on the short term, and on short term gratifications, on quick gratifications. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, somebody with a growth mindset views effort as a necessary path towards mastery. And also they tend to have a longer term focus and a bigger mission in general. Fourth, when it comes to feedbacks, somebody with fixed mindset tends to take things personally, and they also may get defensive. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, the tendency there is to look at feedbacks as something that you can learn from, and that it will help you identify areas for improvement. Finally, when it comes to experiencing setbacks, someone with a fixed mindset will tend to get discouraged by setbacks, and they'll also tend to blame others, other people, other circumstances, and so forth. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, the tendency there is to be accountable for your actions, but also, and perhaps I would argue most importantly, you would look at setbacks and then you would review, reflect, adjust, and then try again. And this last point, we will talk more about this. Now, of course, this is not a binary thing where either you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. There, I tend to believe that there's a spectrum here, and depending on circumstances, or depending on the specific challenge you're facing, maybe you'd lean towards one versus the other. But my hope is that I think all of us can strive as much as we can to try to get to the right side of this resilience spectrum. In other words, to view skills as something that can be improved, to embrace challenges, to view effort as something that's a path towards mastery, to take feedback in a positive light as something that you can learn from and improve upon, and to view setbacks as an opportunity to reflect, review, adjust, and try again. So I think these set of attitudes, attributes associated with growth mindset will really help you to become more resilient in the various challenges that you may face in life. So just to give some specific examples of people who have, or groups who have adopted growth mindsets, I have a few notes here. The first one is as it relates to school or academic performance. Now, growth mindset was really promoted by a professor by the name of Carol Dweck at Stanford. And she cites these schools in various parts of the country, public schools in Chicago, New York, Seattle, etc., that adopted a growth mindset. And she gives the example of, for example, a Chicago school in which instead of telling students that they failed at a particular test or subject, they will tell them not yet. And the reason why they use that terminology is to remind the students that the failure on this test or subject is not permanent. It's just that today, at this instant, they were not able to pass. But through further studies, through hard work, they can still make it the next time. So they adopted this not yet terminology or not yet mindset. In these schools, significantly increased their academic standings to reach near the top of their districts. So a lot of fascinating improvements seen there. And then in the world of sports, there's many examples, but one of my favorite ones is Michael Jordan. And a lot of people don't know this, but he was actually cut from his high school varsity basketball team in his sophomore year because his coaches didn't think he was good enough. And of course, this just even fueled his tenacity to practice even more. And as most of us would probably agree, he is one of the greatest players of all time. In the arts, Steven Spielberg, again, another interesting example. He was actually rejected not once but twice from USC, University of Southern California Film School, where he really wanted to go to. But these rejections did not deter him from his craft, and he kept working at it, and he would eventually become one of the most successful film directors of all time. And ironically, of course, USC would later grant him an honorary degree due to his achievements. So what are some tools out there that we can use to try to adopt a growth mindset? I am a big fan and a big believer of design thinking tools, and I wanted to integrate these two notions here. Now, there's many ways in which design thinking is presented, and at the bottom I show at least two cyclical presentations of design thinking. But at the core of design thinking is just to take a few steps. Like, no matter what challenge you're facing, design thinking initially asks you to clearly understand the problem. And this is the empathize, or what they sometimes call define stage. And then you would brainstorm solutions. And the plural part of it is very important. They don't want you to come up with one solution only. They want you to come up with as many solutions as you can. And then whittle those down to what you think are the most promising ones to quickly prototype a solution. And then they want you to try out this solution or this prototype out there in the field as soon as you can, so that you can get quick feedback. And then you take that feedback you got, and then basically you restart the cycle. That's in a nutshell what design thinking is about. You could apply this to products, you could apply this to processes, or you could apply this to just your personal growth. This is a very extensive topic, but just to give maybe one example of how we may apply this, right? So let's say you have a challenge with public speaking, for example, and you feel like that's one area that you want to improve for yourself. Then the first step is, again, empathize or define the issue, which is, you can that's, you can lay out exactly what the issue is. In this case, it's just, your challenge towards public speaking. And then you go on to this ideate phase, or this brainstorming phase, in which you try to ask yourself, hey, how can I improve my public speaking skills? And then you can list out a whole bunch of things. Like, first, maybe you say, okay, maybe I'll do small talks to my family and friends, or maybe there's a wedding coming up, and okay, maybe that's a little too far, but maybe you can give a toast at the wedding. Okay, if you think that's too much, then no, you want to maybe you'll scale back and say, okay, maybe during my work I will offer to do a few presentations on a few topics, or alternatively, there are certain groups like the Toastmasters, for example, where you can join, and there's a group of people that want to improve their public speaking skills, and you'll work with them. Or maybe you want to go online and talk to some folks by Zoom or by video. So these are, and again, whatever works for you, you make a long list of possibilities. Now, you take a couple of them, and you whichever one you think is the most viable one for your needs, for your current situation, you try it out, and then you get feedback from them. Now, maybe if you gave a small talk or to your family or friends, then you can get live feedback from them. You assess this, you make notes and say, okay, maybe I need to I don't know, speak louder, or maybe I need to enunciate things better, or those kind of things. And then you take those feedbacks, and then you start the process again. Maybe you'll find a different venue, maybe you'll find a different audience, and you keep working on this cycle until you get to the point where you feel like you have achieved what you wanted to achieve. Now, one key thing I want to add about design thinking, and one of the reasons why I really like it, is that failure of these prototypes or these trials is part of the process, and failure is not something to be avoided or to be feared. If a prototype or certain one attempt fails, then it's a learning experience. It's you have learned one thing that does not work, or in trying that out, you have learned things that you can improve for the next effort. So it's a really helpful way to look at product development or self-development. And one other thing to note about that is that you want to be able to try things out quickly. In other words, you don't wait till perfection. You don't wait till the whole thing is just done and you feel like it's perfect and then you'll try it out. No, the idea is that you just prototype something, or you come up with some solution, and then you try it out quickly to get feedback. Feedback is a critical part of the process. So timely feedback and continuous iteration and improvement are part of the process. So whether you're using this idea to, like I said, to develop a product, or to develop or improve yourself, I think it's a very helpful tool to adopt. Okay, now, given that, I hope we are all convinced that growth mindset is extremely helpful to us. I also want to add a few sort of cautionary notes, because in challenging times, I just wanted to add a reminder that you should not feel the constant pressure to change or to grow yourself. And there's many times where it's okay to remember to relax and just be present on certain occasions. especially in this time of COVID and other issues happening around us. These are unusual times, so we should be more forgiving towards ourselves. The other point is that it's also important to acknowledge that some challenges are just more systemic in nature. In other words, we can't just feel like we can solve or we have to solve every challenge that comes our way. So it's important to remember not to burden solely yourself all the times. You can also engage other people into your growth journey. In other words, you can make this a mutually beneficial process so that you take a certain project or a certain self-improvement goal and you share it with somebody that you trust, and then maybe both of you can work towards that goal. So that's another option to consider. There's also this notion of creating a personal board of advisors. In other words, like I think as we all know, like companies heavily rely on a board of advisors. So maybe as an individual, you can also find your community and find some board of advisors. In other words, maybe their friends, maybe their colleagues, maybe their family members, or maybe fellow volunteers from V2I. So people that you trust, people that you respect their opinions of, and then and respect their time as well, but that some people that you can rely to give you some honest feedback in your growth journey. Finally, I just wanted to add a reminder that growth mindset is not a one-time change event. In other words, not something that you do for one particular part of your personality or one particular project and then feel like it's done deal. So it's an ongoing process. There's always room for improvement, and there's also many challenges, many aspects of yourself that you can try to improve. So the goal for today is that is to try to develop a plan towards a growth mindset. I wanted to the foundation for growth mindset is, I think it's captured very well in this quote by a psychologist, Gemma Lee Roberts, and where she asserts that potential is expandable, changeable, and pliable. So this is really the underlying belief here, because I think the potential is not fixed or permanent. We can always grow it, we can always change it, we can always adopt it. So once we really internalize this idea and this notion, then we can use the various tools that we've talked about so far to try to achieve our goal of growth mindset. This one is a 5-step process that I learned from Professor Agnes Lee. Actually, her process it was a 7-step process, but I think the first 5 steps really capture what we're trying to achieve here. So the first recommendation there is to discover what matters to you. In other words, of course, we're all different, and we all have different challenges. So take time to really understand what you want to achieve, what you want to improve. And this could be just a self-reflection process that you do by yourself. You can engage others to try to help you understand what really matters to you. And some things I would advise to consider is, in other words, just don't just look at sort of what is your interest, but also take that idea of what you're really interested in, and also align it with what your values are, what your skills are, what may be desired by your community. So there's a lot of different aspects to this, but once you take all those components and try to do a real self-reflection, try to outline and clearly state what it is that matters to you and what it is that you're trying to improve or achieve. Once you identify that, then the second step in this process is to try to ideate many options. I think we talked earlier about ideation from design thinking perspective, and that's really a key process. And so whatever it is that you're trying to achieve or improve, um, um, just engage in a brainstorming session in which you try to list as many options as possible. Maybe if you're trying to improve something about yourself, maybe you can do it by just reading a book, or reaching out to other people to try to get their feedback, or actually trying out certain things that maybe make you feel a little uncomfortable, so try to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So whatever it is, just ideate as many options as possible. Don't try to block, or don't try to filter any options at this point. This stage is all about just listing as many options as possible for your development goal. Once you list out all these options, the third step is somewhat of an interesting one. It tells you to challenge your limiting beliefs. What that's saying is that before you actually take action to improve yourself, you want to challenge your limiting beliefs. If and this goes back to our earlier notion that like, for example, if you believe that you're not good at math, for example, right? Don't internalize that to the point of, yeah, I was never born with this, I don't have any math potential or math skills, and just leave it at that. Again, remember that potential is expandable, changeable, and pliable. So with practice, with effort, you can change any traits that you may want to develop. So that's what that third step is about, to really reflect and then to challenge any limiting beliefs that may prevent you from getting on this path towards growth. The fourth step tells you to pilot a 90-day career project. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be about your career. It could be just a community project. It could just be a self-improvement project. But the 90-day recommendation is somewhat of an interesting one. The reason why Professor Lee recommends 90 days is that if you say 1 week, it'll be too short. If you say, if you try to put it over a period of a year or so, then it will be too long, and who knows what will happen during that time, and you may get discouraged and get derailed. So 90-day is, again, it doesn't have to be specifically 90 days, but 90 days sort of meets the sweet spot of it's not too long or not too short. So once you identify your long-term goal, it could be, hey, I want to improve my public speaking skills, or it could be, hey, I want to learn this specific coding or programming skill. Whatever it is, by the end of the 90 days, you want to be able to clearly meet that well-articulated goal. So 90 days, 3 months. And again, the key thing is that you don't want to wait all the way until the end of the 90 days. Obviously, you make a plan saying, okay, by the end of this week, I will have clearly outlined my next steps. By the end of 2 weeks, I will have engaged this person or that person, or I'll have bought this book to study, or I'll have talked to, or I'll have refer to a YouTube tutorial. So whatever it is, you make a more detailed plan that you can execute over a period of 3 months. So that the end of 90 days, you will want to concretely achieve your goal. But before that, try to have small target dates that you can achieve your sub goals or mini goals towards that ultimate goal. Once you outline your plan, again, this is the critical step, which is experiment in small ways. Try it out. Sometimes some things may be a little uncomfortable, but learn how to go out of your comfort zone and try it out. And like we talked earlier in our discussion about design thinking, when you go out, when you experiment in small ways, take the feedback, assess it, internalize it, review it. Again, don't worry about failure. It's all about taking feedback, learning where you need to tweak, where you need to adjust things, improve yourself, and then keep going. So this is where where it goes back to what we talked about earlier about failure is not something to be avoided. It is part of the process. So yeah, I hope that these steps are clear enough or concrete enough for you to try to adopt. And I hope that you can commit to some growth-based plan today. And the reason why I emphasize today is that we don't want to put off something that matters to you, something that's important to you for too long. We always have that some goal in the back of our mind saying, I'll do it another day, I'll do it another day. So just identify what that issue is and then ideate multiple options, challenge your limiting beliefs, come up with a plan that you'll try to execute over the next 3 months, 90 days, and then start to experiment in small ways over that period of time. So this is really what I have for today. But in case you want to dig deeper into some of these concepts that we've talked about today, here are a few resources that I would recommend. The first one is by Carol Dweck on growth mindset. She has a book called Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. Also, if you prefer to view things instead of reading them, then I would recommend her TED Talk in 2014, which you can Google. It's called The Power of Believing That You Can Improve. Also, another great author is Angela Duckworth, and she has a book called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And again, if you prefer to just have a quick 10-15 minute talk, then she has a TED Talk in TEDx New York 2013. It's called Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance. Finally, there's a lot of resources and tools on design thinking, but I would recommend the book Design Thinking Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And similarly, one of the TED Talks, among many, is called Designers Think Big, and it's by Tim Brown, who's one of the founders of IDEO. So these are some of the resources that I would recommend if you want to dig deeper into this. So again, thank you very much for taking time to listen to this talk. I hope you found it a little informative. So bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziggy, so much for taking the time to share all of that with us. We're so grateful. And I hope that everyone here today comes away understanding what growth mindset is all about, and you have something really tangible to practice. That was definitely one of our goals with Aspire as a whole, but also for this session, that you would know what can be done. So whether you're going to come up with your 90-day plan or something else, go forth and do it. And if you need encouragement or support along the way, we here at B2I are really happy to be a part of that. So thank you so much, Ziggy, and we hope to see you again on Friday at the same time, when we will be talking and learning more about emotional resiliency, another key component. So Emily will be helping us to pay more attention to our emotions, be curious about them to help us understand what they're trying to tell us, how to manage them instead of letting them manage us. All really key things. So we hope to see you then, and enjoy the rest of your day.